Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. First day of the year.
First day of the year, and we're doing what we love to do.
It happens to be a Monday, January 1st, 2024. Happy New Year to everybody.
And we're going to start the new year talking about the 48 Laws of Power. Law 34.
Law 34.
So, Law 34 is be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The way you carry yourself will often determine how you are treated. In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. For a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown. So Law 34 by Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, is be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. Why don't you start? I just wanted to throw one thing in.
Sure.
You've always said when we walk into a place, walk in there like you own the place.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this, because how you carry yourself is how people perceive you.
Right. And you're right. Because we've done a lot of marketing and we continue to do a lot of marketing. And so I've always said, you know what, when you walk into a place, just walk in there like if you own the place.
Yeah.
Okay? There's a fine line between being cocky,
Arrogant.
and show a degree of self-confidence.
Yeah.
Okay? You have to be very careful. And since I'm human, and I've made mistakes and continue to make mistakes, sometimes you over-surpass the line. So, but it's something that I think it's important. Because if you walk into a room timidly, looking lost, not necessarily figuring out, where you're headed, or, people are going to remember that.
Yeah.
Because, first impressions are almost impossible to erase.
It's almost what you attract. So if you look like somebody who deserves attention, you'll start to merit it. You'll start to get attention.
Correct.
And the way, it could be the way you carry yourself. It could be with the clothing you wear. But the
Right.
way you carry yourself is
Absolutely. Well, everything adds up, I think.
Yeah.
Everything adds up to the persona. Like the clothing that you have, it's important, okay? The way you carry yourself. They say, stand up straight, put your chest forward, and make sure that your head's not bowing, and you just walk in.
You look people in the
with
eyes.
a good stride, and you look at people in the eye. And if you shake hands with someone, don't break the guy's hand or the lady's hand, but make sure it's a nice, firm shake.
Yeah.
And if you're one of these people that sweats a lot,
Yeah.
I knew a guy that sweat profusely, and he had
Clammy hands.
Yeah, so he had handkerchiefs on both pockets, and before, if he saw that there was the opportunity was coming up to shake someone's hand, he would put his hands in his pocket and clear with the handkerchief, and then come
Wow.
up. Yeah, so he was very self-conscious of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But everything adds up to the persona, and
To
so
creating that appearance.
you're creating the appearance. And bottom line is you want to look confident in yourself, because even the law says, if you respect yourself, you're that much ahead. Like a king will command respect from his people.
Right.
He demands respect. And so, he's got that edge. And so, and there are some people that are like that. They walk into a room and, they attract and they seem powerful.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be like material things.
Right.
Somebody can carry themselves with confidence without having those things.
Correct. I agree.
It's kind of like sometimes you see, these couples that the guy is not that great looking, but he has a very good looking lady with him, and it's like, how did he end up with that lady? And it could be that he's very confident,
Yeah.
and you can have somebody who has, let's say, a lot of money or a lot of material things, but very low self-confidence,
Low self-esteem.
low self-esteem. They maybe won't approach a lady that they think is attractive. They won't.
Correct.
So I think that people are attracted to confidence just in general.
I agree.
It doesn't have to be like for relationships, just in general. If somebody's confident, but I think you're right in saying there's a point where it becomes arrogance. There's a point where it looks like you're cocky.
Yeah. Like, I don't know why the person that comes to mind is Conor McGregor.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I mean, Conor McGregor is,
High confidence.
the epitome of self-confidence, to the point that he many times I think he's just cocky.
Yeah.
But he got there. He got to where he's at with a firm belief that he was devoted to his craft, which is fighting, and he was going to do whatever it took, okay, to become the best.
Yeah.
And for a while, he was up there, until, he's had several injuries and stuff like that. And I followed the guy because I think I'm a sucker for, the underdog coming up. And I think a lot of people in our country are,
Well, the underdog story is
It's very
inspiring.
compelling.
Yeah, it's compelling.
And so, he's made it to the top. The key is going to be, can he maintain himself up there? Because it's not just crawling yourself to the top of the hill.
Well, he wasn't. He was able to a certain point, but eventually, everybody, Mike Tyson, all the greats, fall.
They do. Well, because now we're talking about sports, and
Right.
you have your prime, which is a certain age that goes with it, right?
Yes.
I mean, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo,
Correct.
people are saying that he is as fit as a 28-year-old, and I forget what he is. He's 30-something. But he's a machine, right? So if you have that kind of discipline and take care of yourself like that, you're going to last longer, most likely.
Right, but
Eventually, you're playing against 18 and 19-year-old kids that,
But what you're talking about with McGregor is that he knew he was going to become something one day, and you've seen it in some of the documentaries where they're walking around with him.
That's
with the
right.
camera. He's super young, but he's saying basically what he's going to do.
The confidence that he exudes.
Yeah.
People knew that he was going somewhere.
Yeah.
The law states the same thing about Queen Isabella with Christopher Columbus.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Christopher Columbus created an air or persona that he was coming from an elite family, right? An illustrious family, and it wasn't true.
A royal family. Yeah.
Right. It wasn't true at all.
He had married in.
He
right.
married in.
But yeah, he had married in. He basically crafted that
Right.
persona.
So it's interesting because I always there's a saying out there that says, be true to yourself. There's a famous podcaster, I forget his name right now. He came up with something that some important points for 2023. And one of his points, he's very famous. I forget his name. He just interviewed Patrick Bet-David. But anyway, and he said, be true to yourself. Because when you're true to yourself, you're not impersonating a lie or throwing a lie out there. And by doing that, you don't have to worry about the things that you've said because you've been yourself. So you just go back to being yourself and, especially he's in the public eye very much. He's very famous also. And so he says, be true to yourself. But here, they're saying creative air of royalty, whether you have it or not, okay? It's almost like that saying, fake it till you make it. But what ends up happening is that if you're able to create that air, what happened with Christopher Columbus is that when he moved to Spain, he was able to use the contacts that he had in Portugal to sit, you know, at the same table with dukes and princes. And I am a firm believer that, you know, you are the combined element of your 5 friends that you hang around. So if you're hanging around with dukes and princes, then opportunities most likely are going to come, especially if you have this level of confidence, you know?
Right.
So
Well, one thing that Robert Greene says is that, excuse me, there's 2 things. The person can either think that you're extremely confident, destined for greatness,
yes,
or they can think you're mad, you're crazy,
right,
because
right.
of the way you're speaking. And that's what they said, that one of the kings that, or dukes, that Christopher Columbus approached, because when he said, hey, I want to go discover these new
It
lands,
was
he also
the
asked,
Duke of Medina.
okay, he also asked for 10% of whatever the treasures that were found there,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
So it was like a crazy thing to ask for. However, the Duke said, well, it could be
No,
one
that
of,
was Queen Isabella.
well, he did it with both of them.
Oh, okay, okay.
But basically, this person says, it was the Duke, says, look, either the person is mad for asking this
Oh, okay.
much, or there's something behind what he's asking. If they are asking for so much value, they must give that much value. That was kind of the thought process. So if you're asking for so much and you're giving this air of royalty and that you actually deserve it, then people may think and that you do deserve it. And I think I've heard this quote all the time, that perception is reality.
Yeah.
And so if people perceive you to be somebody of power, royal to a certain extent, you know, acting somewhat king-like, let's say, then they may start to treat you that way.
Right, right.
Now, people can also read when you're faking something. If you're paying attention, they'll see, like the fake it till you make it. People who are perceptive will be able to know this person is kind of faking it.
Right.
But I wonder if the majority of the people, or I wonder if you do it right, maybe you're able to convince kings, and like in Christopher Columbus's case, he convinced the Queen
Isabella
to fund.
Yeah.
She gave him 3 ships, and she gave him a crew, and she paid for his salary.
Right. She sponsored the entire trip. You know, just to mention it, you know, he asked for a lot of things, like being the Grand Admiral of the Seas or something, and she gave him everything except one thing.
Right.
Which was 10% of the revenues continuously without end of any lands that he discovered. But she knocked that out in the fine print. Okay, the
Right.
law says that in the fine print, Queen Isabella said, "I will not give you the revenue on any of the lands." It would have made him the richest, him and his heirs, the richest family on the face of the planet. So,
And I guess he didn't notice that.
He didn't read that. The law says, hey, you know, he missed that. But you know, but she gave him everything else. So he was able to convince people that, you know, he had this air about him of royalty, and that he was gonna. And you know, you do see some people that you feel that they are going to.
They're gonna be something.
They're gonna be something in life.
Yeah, they may not be there yet, but they have this drive.
Correct.
They have this air to them.
Yes.
They're gonna be something. Yeah, I agree, and that goes to the law of careful who you offend.
Right.
Because if you come across somebody like that and you offend them, you know, they could, according to that law,
Oh, they'll make your life miserable
spend
forever.
the rest of your life.
Yeah, they'll make it their life's quest.
So, I agree with this portion also, where Robert Greene says, look, in the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. If you're common, it will make people disrespect you. Again, talking about power, maintaining power, gaining power. Um, yeah, if you're just a common person, a commoner, what? Why would anyone give you attention?
Sure. Especially in today's day and age, there's extreme amounts of competition for the same, you know.
Eyes.
Yeah. So, you have to do something different,
Yeah.
and these people that have risen, but, you can talk forever on this law because, the faster you rise, also you could have the fastest demise. And you can see it in a lot of these Hollywood actors, that they are on top, and then within a short period of time, they're holding regular jobs. And they were people that, commanded at the box office a tremendous ticket. And then all of a sudden, they fall from grace. And that's extremely difficult to...
Psychologically.
Oh, let me tell
Yeah.
you. And, there was one point in my life where I created a little bit and then I lost everything. And coming back the second time was brutal. It was a mistake I made. Somebody, things happen in business. And so, I didn't quite hit bottom all the way, but I hit pretty close to bottom, and coming back again the second time around was, I'll tell you this from my experience, my humble 2 cents is you're a lot more cautious.
Sure.
And
you learn from it.
Oh, yeah. You're very careful who you trust. You practically don't trust anybody because you've been hit across the head really hard and knocked over. And so, coming around the second time is more... I don't know if it's more difficult, but you're definitely wider eye. You're keeping your eyes out on everything. And so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like about this law is it has to do with how you carry and how you feel about yourself. And so it reminds me, like in sales, there was this very famous quote we used to say when I was training, 90% of objections are in our own head. So when you're trying to sell something, right? If I'm trying to sell you something, I've already got all the reasons, 90% of the reasons why you do not want this thing I'm selling. Let's call it a service.
Right.
And I need to get rid of those things before I meet with you. And it's very difficult for people, and it's challenging for me even, because sometimes we think, even before, let's say, I give you the price of the thing, I'm already saying to myself, you can't afford that price. And you have to, in sales, get rid of those objections.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with this law, because, you have to, you can't, if you really want to act regally or act like a king, you have to get rid of these self-imposing limitations.
Well, you need to believe it. Bottom line.
You need to believe it.
You need to believe it.
And that's what Robert Greene is saying, that there's a lot of self-imposed limitations that we have that we need to get rid of. Like Christopher Columbus apparently comes from, I guess, humble origins.
His father was a weaver and sold cheese in the market.
So he's here among the royalty.
Right. And he's saying that he came from royalty when it wasn't true.
Right. I met a gentleman once that was in my same line of business, that it was interesting because I felt he was trying to do something somewhat similar, where he was saying he was from a certain country, which I knew, or I felt my gut was like that he wasn't.
Okay.
And the man was dressed super sharp with a suit. He had a little handkerchief, It was like he had this whole look to him.
Sure.
Which is very common in sales, I think.
Yeah.
Just in general. Anyways, he was always dressed suit and tie, super sharp, super clean cut. And then he would say he said he was Italian.
Okay.
But I thought he wasn't Italian, and I knew he spoke Spanish. And then when one time I asked him, "Oh, what part of Italy are you from?" He gave me a weird answer. Like
Okay.
he didn't really know. So, anyways, it just made me think. Like he was, I felt he was trying to create a persona of this guy who, because it was very common to be Spanish-speaking Hispanic, and he wanted to separate himself and say, "Oh, I'm Italian." I don't know. I just thought that was interesting, and I think he was trying to act like a king to be treated like one.
Well, look, here's the 2 cents on it from me, and
Yeah.
whatever it's worth, what do I know, right? But if you can master the fact that you can look self-confident
Mm-hmm.
but not cocky, okay? I think that's a good point. There's a lot of people out there that purposely act in a cocky manner, okay? Because that sets you apart. People are gonna talk about you no matter what. They're gonna
Oh,
maybe.
they're intentional. You don't think that's natural that they're
Oh,
cocky?
well, you know what? Maybe in some people it is. They just have this energy and this drive and this self-confidence that it just exudes from their body, and everybody will interpret that as being cocky.
That's the thing, is how is it interpreted?
Right. Exactly.
Because they may just be confident in their abilities,
Yes.
but other people. I remember I was like 13, 14 years old, and I remember I wouldn't talk a lot. I was very quiet at that time,
Okay.
and I didn't know a lot of these people, and it was in a confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time, finally, when I broke up into groups and we were talking, and they were like, "Oh, you're talking everything this and that. I always thought you were I always thought you were conceited. That's why you weren't talking to anyone."
Huh.
And I thought, that's weird. That wasn't it. I was just shy. I guess I didn't know anyone there. But they perceived it as, this guy thinks he's better. Let's say he's conceited.
Okay. Well.
So it's interesting, the perception.
Sure. But there's signals we give off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll tell you this: if acting in a certain manner gets you a seat at the table, okay, at the so-called table, you have no idea how many times in movies and in negotiations and all over the place, people say in their effort to climb, right? I want a seat at the table. I want to sit down with the people that make these decisions. So, in the case of Christopher Columbus, he was able to sit with dukes and princes.
Yeah.
And you are a product of the people that you surround yourself.
Right.
But
how do you act how do you act and actually believe it? Because that's what you said earlier. You actually have to believe it.
I believe you do.
And you can't just, because I guess you can say actors really believe the role that they play.
Like the guys that I know, two people that own the most beautiful vehicles, okay? But I know that, at the end of the day, when they go home, their home is very modest, and they put that vehicle in the garage, and the vehicle is probably the biggest asset to their name, okay? But when they come out, they are super sharp, super dressed in this very expensive late model vehicle, and they're trying to do business at a very high level, okay? But then, at the end of the day, when they go home, they have a very modest living.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, you know what? It depends what your values are and what are you going after.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you that as you get older, it's going to change. Things are going to change. So, but, if you're able to land a seat at the table.
Well, the only way you do that is if you really believe you belong there.
That's one. And the other thing is, you better bring some kind of value. Because you won't be sitting there for long if they realize, this is just a superficial type of.
Right.
You're going to have to bring some value to it. And so these people, and in the case of Christopher Columbus, he did discover a bunch of lands. you know,
Not the
just
ones he
America.
was looking for, but
Right, but
he landed.
still, he brought gold and all kinds of stuff back to
Yeah.
Spain, so he delivered, and so
He did.
he,
He did deliver from that
he
point of view. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of people say all kinds of things about him, and so forth and so on, but we're basically sticking to the law, and we have to
He
keep in
does.
mind these
He
are
does. It's
power
not
moves,
even Columbus Day anymore. It's Indigenous Peoples Day.
right? And again, these are power moves.
Correct. Now, one thing that Robert Greene says at the beginning is, when we're kids, we believe we deserve everything, and over time, that goes away. Whether it's beat out of us, whether it's taught out of us. But as a kid, I want everything. I deserve everything. So we actually are born regal. And that's, if we can get back to that place one day, that's where you obtain power, according to Robert Greene in this law. I personally don't think I can't remember using this law and thinking like, oh, let me act regal or anything like that. But yeah, I can see that over time, school, parents, society, etc., takes you shouldn't have that, or you don't need that, but as a kid, you believe you deserve it all.
Yeah, I think that for good or for bad, as we move forward in life and we get older, between the school systems that we have and the parents trying to get you to be cordial with people and so
Domesticate.
forth, you get molded
Yeah.
into what society thinks that is the right thing. And you see it. I saw it last night. Last night was New Year's Eve, and I went to a gathering and there were children there. And I love to observe children because they are the raw example of what
If you're ugly, they'll tell you you're ugly.
they're brutal. They're brutal.
Yeah.
And there was one particular game and everybody wanted to play it. And the ones that were more dominant are the ones that got more playtime.
Mm.
And the ones that were a little quiet or a little shy or whatever, or the parents have taught them to be courteous and this and that, they didn't get playtime.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah. And so the ones that were more dominant, that were more aggressive,
Physically.
Yeah.
Or just strong
because
in
there was one little guy that was very, it's interesting. You look at it, and I agree with Robert Greene on that.
Mm-hmm.
Little by little, we get chipped away of certain things that could be considered assets in our armor to move forward and gain, the so-called success.
So how do you do it? If you were to look back and see how these kids are being raised, how do you teach them certain things without breaking that character that maybe they have of I deserve everything?
I don't know the answer, son. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this. I admired a child that when I come up to that child and I said, hey, how cute she is or how cute he is, that kid, as little as they are, have this scrunch on their forehead and they're looking at me like, who the heck are you? And why are you trying to be
King-like.
Huh?
Queen-like. King-like.
They just, and it's difficult to get them to trust you or
Right.
whatever. And when I was younger, that was something that I would say to maybe that child, oh, he's your uncle, even though he's not your uncle. You can call him Uncle Tony, or you can call him Uncle Eddie, or, but they're not, right? Just to get them to loosen up with the person.
Oh, you're saying that you would tell that kid
Yeah.
that, hey, this is like a family member.
Yeah, it's like a family member.
You could be
Chill.
nice to them.
Yeah, you chill. You can chill.
Well, I'm in a lot of baby pictures looking at the camera like
that's
that.
That's right. You're right.
I
And
was,
you were one that I would say, hey, he's cool, But now...
give him a pass.
Yeah, but now I don't. Now I don't.
Now you let them
I let
have
them
that
make
face.
their own decision. Because that kid's smart. I don't care if they're 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. I don't care if they're 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
they feel something,
Yeah.
okay, that should not be overwritten. And so you see, as I've gotten older, I've changed my mind. And so I let them. And another thing that I do now, because I observe kids a lot,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that they are teaching me constantly. I learn from children so much, it's not even funny. I said that the other day to somebody and they laughed at me. Like saying, what can a child teach you? And
Wow.
that's okay. I mean, to each their own also. I'm not going to take this exorbitant amount of energy to try to convince someone that I'm right on something because I may not be, you know?
Well, the kid doesn't have those. What would they be?
The
Like
restrictions.
restraints. Yeah.
Right. Now, the other thing is that, um, what
They don't
was,
care if they offend you.
no,
They don't care. One time, I'll never forget, at a party, it was this lady that rumor has it she's not a nice lady, went to go pick up this kid, that the kid was friendly with everybody. But the moment that that lady picked him up, cried, didn't want to be in her hands, this and that. And she was like, oh, and had to put him back right away.
okay.
But he was cool with everybody else. So I was like, maybe there's something to this lady not being nice, that even a kid who can't even speak doesn't want to be in your arms.
Right. Yeah, you can't force a child to do something either because then it becomes worse. But the other thing that I do now is I call it kids' politics. Okay? There was fighting over that toy last night.
Oh,
Okay? But I did not go in.
intervene.
No. They can handle it themselves. Believe me. And you see it's if you these were children from different families. They come to the New Year's Eve party. There was one particular toy with little figurines and stuff like that, and everybody wanted to play that. Okay? And so
You had it just from afar, you observed.
well, it was on my table.
Oh, okay.
So not that far. Everybody came over. I got my shoes stepped on like 10 times, and there was one guy that figured that I was his safety net. So every time he grabbed one of the figures, he would give it to me. And, like hold on to it. When I need it, I'm going to come back to you, but don't you dare give it to anybody else, kind of thing. And so, but I see the parents coming and saying, no, little Charlie, you don't do that, don't cry like that, or this, and that was me. Now, of course, if I see a child grabbing, Ramses and hitting somebody over the head and it's going to break,
It reminds me of...
I won't let that happen. You know what I mean?
It reminds me of Chimp Empire. The number one rule of the people documenting, the cameramen and camera women, you cannot intervene.
Okay.
Even if the chimp is gonna die because he's in a situation that he needs to be saved, you cannot intervene. And you've been following that chimp for years.
Do you know how difficult that must be?
Oh.
I would break the rule.
But that's the number one rule.
Yeah, there I break the rule.
You can't intervene. You have to let nature take its course.
I need to see that again.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
So these parents are constantly intervening.
Oh yeah, my table, and inadvertently, I had no idea. I come in and we're gonna wait for the year. Today is January 1st, so I sat at this table and there was this toy there. It's a little castle and things with. And
so the person that was the strongest wins the toy.
The strongest wins, and they resort to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
There was one that was crying. I want it.
that doesn't get you it.
Well, he got it for a while, but then he was.
It's short-lived.
It's short-lived. It was taken away from him. So.
What you're talking about with kids, and by the way, I look at some pictures and video of me as a kid. I'm that same person as an adult.
How's that?
Mannerisms, gestures, even thoughts. Like I've read something that it was a letter that I wrote in maybe like freshman, sophomore year. It was in high school.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking about my grandparents.
Uh-huh.
And them coming from Cuba, your parents, right? Them coming from Cuba and this and that. And I still think that way. I mean, this is now 14 years old or something, but I still think a lot of that way today. But even younger, like the thought processes that I had and stuff, a lot of that is established very early on. So what I was getting to is that kid who demands respect because he's not gonna be just here smiley this and that huggity. No, you have to get that out of them, and he won't give it to you.
Yeah.
Or she won't give it to you. That person is acting out Law 34. That little person, even though the kid, even though maybe it's just natural to them.
Right. There was one little guy that came and took all the figurines. Like there were like 6 of them. He took them all, and he just took off with it, and just left a bare bone structure, which was a castle. And so it was interesting because he didn't want to share with anybody. He wanted it all to himself, and he took off with it. And then little by little, the figurines started appearing because, the ones that were left behind started complaining to their parents, and then, well, what happened? And oh, what's his name took it? Oh, okay, well, let's go talk to his parents, see if he can give him back. So, I saw it all unfold, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
But, being self-confident is extremely important. If you're not, you better work at it. And some people don't care if they are overly cocky. Like if you look at Grant Cardone, he's abrasive as all get-go. And he got to the position that he's at by being abrasive. And he tells you, if you're offended by what I say, guess what? I don't care because you're not my focus. That you're not the client that I'm after.
Yeah.
So good luck. Stay offended.
And self-confidence, if you don't have it, you develop it through, well, I'll just say from personal experience, I know that at home is very important. Like, how you're raised is very important. But also later on in life, for me, I developed higher self-confidence as I began to accomplish things that I had set out to accomplish. It's like, oh, I was able to do that. Boom. It's like a level up. Oh, and I was able to do this, and I was able to do this bigger, sell this bigger, whatever the case. And then the confidence begins growing because you're like, hey, I can do bigger things now. I can accomplish greater things because I was able to do these little ones that led to
right. Now it's a progression.
Right.
Yeah. Well, in sales, I remember that knowing my product was extremely important to me. So knowing my product increased my level of self-confidence. And knowing my product allowed me to produce more and sell more. And as my numbers grew, then you develop a reputation. Like right now I'm watching a program on Netflix, and it's about attorneys. And this guy never loses. And he has developed that reputation, and he spreads it.
Like Mayweather.
Yeah, he spreads it. He spreads it around New York City. If you hire this attorney, you most likely will win because he's never lost.
Right.
He always wins. And he is cocky. Very cocky. And people tell him in the program, it's part of the program, right? And he says, hey, you're cocky. And he says, no, I'm confident. But if you want to call it cockiness, go right ahead. But, if you want to hire me, you're going to win. Because why? Because I never lose. But if you want to call that cockiness, go right ahead. So, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And he finds a way to win. I know it's a program and I know it's a Netflix thing, but to me it's very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Confidence comes from knowing your product in sales.
And how good you are. For example, a surgeon.
But I was going to say, it's not only knowing your product, because there are people that know their product very, very, very well.
Right. Okay.
And there's something missing there in their ability to maybe communicate.
I'll buy that. Sure.
But I think you need to, as a given, know your product.
Right.
I forgot what it was, something having to do with like, it skips my mind. But basically, it's a given. You have to, at a baseline, know your product extremely well.
Right.
But How do you build confidence?
Well, in my case, I didn't know anything. I mean, nothing, zilch, zero, nada
So that gave you more confidence.
about life insurance. I remember sitting down for the first time, I kid you not, and just reading, and it wasn't entering, okay? So I had to create a space where I would always go to that same spot to read about life insurance in my house, and it would be at a certain time after dinner when I was ready.
Little ritual.
Yeah, a little ritual kind of thing. And I would sit down, and then I would think, I'm a sponge now. Let this thing sink in. Because I was coming from a completely different field. I was coming from pre-med and this kind and biology, inorganic chemistry, and all this stuff. And then I get thrown into life insurance, and it was done by necessity. By necessity.
You had to learn it.
I had to learn it, and I knew that if I didn't, I figured that was one of my ways of increasing because I was a self-confident person. Okay, that's another thing. You get shaken up by life a little bit, okay, but you have this value for yourself, this self-confidence, and it has to do with the way you've been raised, because we're very proud people, right? And so I would sit down and try to, and it was difficult, but then I started building on my knowledge, and then I started selling more, and then my numbers started climbing.
Yeah.
And then I started feeling good about myself, and then I would look at things as a challenge, not as something being impossible.
Right.
And that goes back to that what you said earlier in this podcast right now, that you said it's a growth. You
incremental, small incremental.
It goes back to that.
Yeah.
And I built those blocks, so it's harder to knock those blocks off now because they're solidly based in my constitution as a salesman.
But it's a good
that's
point.
How I move forward.
But it's a good point that you say sometimes life shakes you up and it makes you question maybe your level of regalness. Your level of confidence.
Yeah, your level of confidence.
Yeah, well, because he's saying act like a king. That has to do with you have to be extremely confident to act like a king.
Right. And, some people say fake it till you make it. I always put that phrase down, but there are some people out there that by...
Well, if you really believe it, you're not faking it.
That's right. You gotta... It's a mind hack, folks. It's a mind hack, right? You just have to do something so that you can believe it. Do your little... What did you call it? A ritual? Like I had a ritual to sit down and learn this stuff. Because look, I know for a fact, if it gets you a seat at the table and you're there with, let's say in our case, we're in real estate. If we are able to get a seat at the table with developers, with investors, with people, look, things happen.
Sure.
Opportunities appear.
Yeah.
And you have to create
You have
those.
to be, that's one thing. You have to be in proximity. I don't remember who said that, but like somebody was talking about real estate. If you want to be in real estate, you need to get closer to it. I don't remember who said it. It's one of these guys. But you have to be in proximity, close proximity to it.
You have to. And you have to let the word out. You have to live, breathe, eat, walk what you do.
Whatever it is you want to do.
What you do.
Yeah.
Because I was going to tell you, surgeons, surgeons develop a reputation, they're either good or bad. There's no in between, and then your numbers do the talking. I mean, especially if you don't want people dying on your surgery bed, So, it's totally different. It's a life and death thing. With me, It was life insurance. You either sell more or you don't. The numbers, you sell or you don't, but there's not that much drastic
correct
situation. We've been all over the place on this law. But it's a good law. I like it.
Yeah.
I can't say that, I'm not quite sure that I've used it to the extent that it gets portrayed, because thinking being regal, But if it's translatable to being confident, then the answer is definitely yes.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe elements of it
Elements
we've
of it.
used just in different ways, different parts in our lives. But
Yeah, and these are power moves. You know, Robert Greene is a genius. These are power moves, and you know, you can dissect. We could talk about one law for a very long time, because you can dissect it and break it down and down to the atom. Let's say, you
yeah.
know, and but you know, if you learn them, and you can protect yourself, and you can use some of them to your most definitely advancement.
Well, this one, I I um I do think we can all use it in a positive light because you're talking about your own self worth, self belief, self esteem,
Right.
self confidence. So it's, I think, a positive one. It doesn't seem to be like putting anyone down. There's a little bit of acting, but Robert Greene says that we're all actors. That we put on a mask when we go out and leave the house. Let's say some people act in their own house too,
Oh yeah. Well,
but you put on a
you're
mask.
acting all the time from the moment you open your eyes.
Yeah, but he says when you leave the house, you put on a mask. You go to work, and that's not who you are. But when you finally come home, you can take that mask off.
And put on another one.
Maybe.
I hope I don't get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Cool. We'll wrap it up.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year, everybody.
We wish everybody the best for 2024.
Absolutely.